They walked into the city like ghosts. Zira wore a dusty blue shawl over her head, her face shadowed, her shoulders still healing. Gino stayed close, pretending to be just another servant boy. No one looked twice. In Abanji, pain was everywhere, limping beggars, broken traders, wandering eyes. No one noticed two more. But the king's guards were back. Thicker. Sharper. And the city felt afraid. Posters were pasted across stone walls. Drawings of a woman, barely detailed, accompanied by one word, traitor. Zira studied one in silence. Gino spat. They don't even know what you look like. Doesn't matter, Zira murmured. They'll smell blood when I walk in. They had a plan. It wasn't flawless. But it was daring. The palace was preparing for a feast, King Oduro's first public appearance since the attack. Rumors swirled like smoke. He'd been cut so deep he couldn't walk properly anymore. That he'd nearly bled out. That his right hand trembled whenever he touched a blade. And still, he called it a victory feast. Zira called it an invitation. The plan was this: Gino would sneak into the kitchens the night before, posing as a cowboy. From there, it accessed the 7 tunnels, the underground paths that weaved through the palace like veins. Zira would enter through the rear courtyard disguised as a visiting food vendor, one of hundreds. They would meet near the lower hall. After that, things would move fast. Very fast. She walked to the courtyard with her bag and crates. Guards checked faces. Bags. Crates. But not too deeply. They were tired. Bored. Hungry. No one expected the woman who stabbed the king to walk back into his home. She passed through the gate. No questions. Inside, the courtyard buzzed with activity. Servants darted between stalls, carrying wine, spices, bowls of steaming rice. Dancers rehearsed in the corner, drums pounding. Somewhere above, the king's banner flapped in the breeze. Zira ducked behind a pillar, set down the tray, and removed the cloth covering the fish. Beneath them, her weapon, wrapped tight in palm leaves. A thin, curved dagger. Short, silent, perfect for a close kill. She tucked it into her waistband and vanished into the crowd. Gino was already waiting in the 7 tunnels, his hands black with coal, his shirt damp with sweat. He grinned when she reached him. "You made it." "Of course I did." "You ready?" Zira stared into the shadows. "No. But I'm doing it anyway." They entered the upper halls through a narrow stone stairwell, quiet as rats. The music from the feast hall echoed down the corridors, bright, proud, oblivious. Laughter. Toast. The sound of goblets clinking. Royal voices boasting about peace, about power, about the fool who tried to end the king. Zira felt the heat rise in her throat. She stepped forward. 2 guards stood outside the gold-plated doors to the feast hall. Zira moved fast. 1 punch. 1 stab. They dropped. Gino dragged one behind a pillar. Zira opened the doors. And the room fell silent. Every eye turned to her. The king sat at the head of the long table, wrapped in thick robes of gold and burgundy. His crown sat slightly tilted. A cane leaned beside him. His face was pale, older. His right hand trembled just enough to notice. He recognized her instantly. Zira stepped inside, blood on her hand, her chin high. "I thought we should finish what we started," she said. The silence shattered. Guards lunged. Zira threw a blade. It struck one in the chest. Gino burst in behind her, hurling smoke powder stolen from the kitchens. The hall exploded in confusion, shouting, choking, flames from knocked candles. Zira dove forward, her hand slicing the air. She reached the king, only feet away, when a sword slashed across her thigh. She fell. A guard raised a spear. Geno tackled him. Zira screamed, roared, grabbed the dagger from her belt, and crawled up the steps to the throne. Oduro stood, panting, reaching for his cane. She met his eyes and drove the blade through his thigh. He screamed. Guards surged forward. Zira was grabbed, dragged, beaten to the floor. Geno was pinned beside her, blood on his face. It was over. Or so they thought. A fire had started. Small. Then bigger. Flames licked the ceiling. The drapes caught. Smoke rose. One guard shouted for buckets. Another ran. A scream erupted from somewhere deeper in the hall. Zira used the distraction. She headbutted the guard holding her. Roared. Grabbed Geno's hand. They fled through the side exit, coughing, limping. Smoke curled down the halls as nobles screamed. Chaos. They didn't look back. They made it as far as the stable yard before collapsing. Zira's leg was bleeding badly. Geno's eye was nearly swollen shut. But they were alive. They'd gotten close. Hurt him again. Exposed his weakness. And if the fire spread, the palace might be gone by morning. Zira looked up at the sky, now glowing with orange light. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just breathed. We are not done, she whispered. Geno nodded. Not by a long shot. By morning, the palace had burned halfway to the ground. The feast of power became the ashes of shame. 3 nobles were dead. 12 guards injured. And King Oduro, though alive, was now crippled beyond repair. Word spread quickly across the kingdom. The throne was cursed, and a woman had brought a king to his knees not once, but twice. But Zira didn't hear the news. She was bleeding in a fishing hut by the southern cliffs, her eyes barely open, her breath shallow. Geno sat beside her, crushing dried herbs with shaky hands. His face was swollen, bruised, his shirt torn. But he hadn't left her side. You're not allowed to die, he muttered. Zira gave the faintest of smiles. Didn't know you make the rules now. I do. Just today. He wiped sweat from her forehead. You stabbed him again. I wanted to do worse. You will. For 3 days, she drifted between fever and silence. The wound in her thigh turned angry. Geno fed her with spoons of broth, cleaned her cuts with sea salt, and barked at her like an angry rooster whenever she tried to move. By the 5th day, she sat upright. By the 6th, she leaned to the edge of the cliff, wrapped in a sheet, and stared down at the sea. It moved like it always had, indifferent, powerful, endless. Why the sea? Geno asked. Zira didn't turn. Because it never asks questions. It just takes what you give. The kingdom changed while she healed. The council met in secret, whispering about removing Oduro and naming his cousin regent. Merchants stopped doing business with the palace, afraid of what might come. Fishermen told stories about a woman who stabbed the king and vanished like mist. Children played games pretending to be her. And Geno watched it all with wide, eager eyes. She's becoming a myth, he told her one morning. They are afraid. But they also admire you. I didn't do it for admiration. I know. But if they're scared, good. 2 weeks passed. Zira could walk without limping now. Her scars would stay. Her face had thinned, her voice had grown quieter. She wasn't broken. Just hardened. Geno was already planning their next move. We go west. Into the salt flats. Find the rebel camps. Maybe even get word to other kingdoms. They'd love to see Oduro fall. Zira stirred the small fire. You really think there's a war coming? Geno grinned. You started it. Why stop now? Zira was quiet. Then she said, because sometimes surviving is the bigger revenge. They left before dawn. 2 packs. 1 map. A patch of dried fish. And no names. They didn't say goodbye to the hut. Or the cliffs. Or the village. They just vanished. But the story didn't. In the markets, old women whispered of the girl with the knife and the king with the limp. At the palace, Oduro stopped showing his face. His voice grew hoarse. His eyes bloodshot. He paced his chambers with a cane that clicked like guilt on marble floors. Sometimes he mumbled her name. Sometimes he screamed it. And outside, far from the city, hidden behind rivers and stone, Zira lived. She taught Jeno how to track prints in the sand. She learned how to treat wounds without flinching. And one evening, as the sun bled across the water, she let herself laugh again. Just once. Just enough. Because for the first time in years, no one was chasing her. It was a small fishing village, forgotten by maps, untouched by royal patrols. Zira lived there for months, cutting her hair short, building boats by hand. She went by another name. She didn't tell stories. But when a stranger arrived, limping and asking about the woman who bled the throne, she was already gone. Years passed. Some say she was seen in the Northern Isles, sailing under a stolen flag. Others say she led a rebellion in the Southlands, where warlords now trembled at the name Rina. But the sea always whispered the truth. That once, a girl stabbed the king in daylight. That once, she fled, not to hide, but to become something more. And that the sea still remembers her name. Even if the kingdom tries to forget. But the king was meant to die. The truth came like a tide, slow, then unstoppable. He had ruled with terror. Buried brothers. Burned villages. Broken every vow to keep power. And though he bled and limped and cursed the sky, death was not done with him yet. It found him one morning, curled in a corner of his chamber, king clutched like a weapon, eyes wide open but long gone. No crown. No guards. No mercy. The healers called it a heart rupture. The whisper said it was justice. No tears were shed. No songs were sung. They buried him in a tomb no one visits, just stone and silence and a name that history began to erase. But somewhere across the salt flats and shadowed waves, a woman stood still as wind. She felt nothing. Not peace. Not pain. Just a knowing. The throne was cursed. But she was free. And that was always the plan.